Hello again. We are in Newcastle upon Tyne this weekend. Our host, St James's and St Basil's Church in Fenham. On our panel, Guy Opperman. Guy is the Pensions Minister and Conservative MP for Hexham in Northumberland, a 20-mile westward hurtle along the A69 from here. Also with us, the Labour MP for, well, here, Newcastle upon Tyne Central, and Shadow Science Minister Chi Onwurah. Dame Nicola Stevenson is regarded as a leading figure in teaching. Nicola is the Chief Executive and Executive Head Teacher of the Valor Multi-Academy Trust, which runs 2 primary schools in the West End of Newcastle. She represents the North East of England on the executive of the trade union, the NAHT, the National Association of Head Teachers. And John Elliott is the founder of the manufacturing business Ebac, based in Newton Aycliffe in County Durham. John left school aged 15 and was quoted as saying his biggest regret was 2 wasted years. He should have left at 13. Today, Ebac employs over 200 people and makes water coolers, air conditioning systems and the first British designed and built washing machine in 40 years. Newcastle, your Any Questions panel. Question 1 comes from Joyce McCarthy. Hello, Joyce.
Joyce McCarthy. Hundreds of doctors and scientists have attacked the Prime Minister over what they call a criminal plan for so-called Freedom Day. Is opening up dangerous and premature?
Thank you, Joyce. This was a letter to the medical journal The Lancet relating to England's opening up on Monday. Chi, first on this.
Thank you, Chris. Can I just start by saying how pleased I am to welcome Any Questions here to Newcastle. My last Any Questions before COVID was in a beautiful church in Spalding, and after that I suggested to James, the vicar here, that this church, the Church of St James and St Basil's, apply to host Any Questions, and I'm so glad he accepted it, and I recommend it to our beautiful churches and other places across the region. Is it reckless? Absolutely it is reckless. Freedom Day on Monday, I think Boris Johnson feels it's going to be Freedom Day for him. He is going to get out of responsibility for the pandemic. But actually, it isn't even going to be that, because you cannot outsource public health to the public, which is what he is trying to do. In Newcastle, we have over 800 cases per 100,000. That 2 months ago, before Boris Johnson let the Delta variant in, it was only 40. That rate of increase is terrifying, and it's going to impact the NHS, which already has a 6 million waiting list. Okay. It impacts people. It is, so we need to have a controlled reopening. We need a controlled reopening, and part of that has to be keeping face masks. They're a really minor inconvenience, but they do help reduce the spread.
At what point, though, Chi? Because at some point in a pandemic, there has to be a moment, doesn't there, where power over our day-to-day lives is handed back from the state to individuals. And we've seen that gradual process in different ways all across the UK over the last few months. You've got to do it at some point, haven't you? And the virus isn't going to vanish, so when do you do it?
But this is the contradiction in the government's messaging. So you're saying that we need to live with COVID, and that also we need to open up. Now, we agree, Labour agrees, we need to open up, but part of living with COVID, because the virus isn't going away, is to do that in a controlled fashion. So yes, open up on Monday, but keep masks, make self-isolation work, because that's part of the reason why it's spreading, is because it's really cruel to tell people who are on low wages, who aren't going to get sick pay, that they need to self-isolate. Put in place continue flexible working when people can work from home. Again, reduce the spread, and then put in place things like ventilation. There are many things that we can put in place to reduce the spread of this disease, but doing nothing is reckless, and it will cost lives.
John Elliott next.
Well, so far my position has always been lives are more important than profit or pleasure. So I've been in favour of the lockdowns. In fact, I would have done more. But I've changed my mind, because I believe the vaccination has changed the game completely. Vaccination has made the COVID virus less aggressive than normal influenza. Now, there's going to be cases, but deaths are going down, serious illnesses are going down. I think the vaccination has changed the ballgame. And so I think we should open up, I've got no problem wearing masks. I think there's some inconvenience. I think 3 weeks ago I had to self-isolate for 10 days because I'd been near someone apparently, and I think that's taking a sledgehammer to crack a nut. I hadn't got it. I was tested in 3 days. I didn't know I had it, but it still stayed for 10 days. I think that's the one I've relaxed. I've got no problem wearing masks. I agree totally. It's a slight inconvenience. Doesn't worry me at all. But the 10-day isolation is a big cost to people, and I think it is necessary because of the vaccination. The vaccination has changed the ballgame, in my opinion.
Okay.
It might change back again, then we'll need to look at it. But at this point in time, I believe the vaccination means the virus is under control.
John, there's been lots of talk in the last few days about the pingdemic, the whole business of people having to self-isolate because the app says you've got to hold yourself up for umpteen days. How's it affecting your business?
Yeah, we've got several people now isolating. And they probably won't get it, and if they get it, it'll be less than influenza. You know, really, I'm sorry being a parrot here, vaccination has changed the ballgame. I was in favour. I think we should lock down sooner and more.
Guy Opperman shall I try again? Guy Opperman for the government.
So I agree with John. I think the key game changer here is the vaccination that has taken place. The successful vaccine rollout has utterly transformed the impact upon hospitalizations and deaths. There is no doubt whatsoever that we have to learn to live with this virus and progress to the best of our possibilities to go ahead and reopen the economy. There is a variety of things that are going on, and so clearly there is going to be an obligation as set out by the Chief Medical Officer to continue to wear masks in certain situations. Clearly there is the self-isolation going on, and clearly...
It's not an obligation driven by what central government are saying, though, is it? It's others who are saying, whether it be transport providers or mayors, you must wear a mask if you're travelling on whatever. It's now, it will be on Monday, advice, won't it, from the government?
Let me quote from the Chief Medical Officer, who said, I would wear a mask where the first is in any situation which is indoors, crowded, with proximity to other people, if I was required to do by a competent authority, or if somebody was uncomfortable if I did not wear a mask. I think there is a degree of common sense going forward that clearly in certain enclosed situations a mask is necessary and should be worn on an ongoing basis.
Chi?
So, Guy, you and I are both taking the train to Hexham, I take it. At what point exactly in that carriage, if there's 5 people, 10 people, will you think that it's the right thing to wear a mask? And can I just ask you, why should that decision, when it's impacting people's health, be left to individuals? Why can't the decision just be taken to make masks mandatory on public transport, rather than, if Uber can see the need to put it like that, why can't the government just say that? And then it's simple. I don't have to, count everybody in the carriage.
Okay, Gary?
Well, individual train operators are making those decisions. Individuals can make these decisions, and we have to progress to a situation where the country is opened up and where we actually make the step forward that is done in a very measured and balanced way leading up to August the 16th when the next step takes place.
Guys, is there a little bit of you that thinks, given where we are now, with cases going through the roof, people being pinged left, right and centre, lots of councils in the northeast of England making the argument that they would like to see the government go further, that maybe you've picked just the wrong moment for doing this?
Well, this is based upon clinical advice from the Chief Medical Officer, who has made it clear that now is the right time to proceed with this. And there is no doubt that he has been interviewed on a repeat basis, setting out his view that summer is the right time to do the unlocking for all the reasons that we understand, that they will be outside, that the kids will be out of school within a matter of days. And clearly, these are judgment calls, but this has been set out for some considerable period of time, and it is the right thing to reboot the economy and get us up and going again.
Dame Nicola Stevenson, next.
I really welcome the question, Joyce. Thank you very much. In schools, we have children who've missed 820,000 days this week due to COVID-related issues. So I desperately want the children to be back in school and to be educated, and all school leaders want that. With regard to masks, I think it comes down to common sense, and I think that the British public have got that in bucket loads. I don't think we've often been given the chance to use it. In schools, we say to children about British values, and we talk about empathy and respect and looking after your community. And I think if you're around people who are clearly nervous about coming out of lockdown, it's no hardship to put a mask on to make other people feel more welcome. And I'm sure we can all make common sense decisions. So if I was on an empty metro at night time and I'm the only person in the carriage, I'd feel pretty confident I don't need to wear a mask in that situation. If, however, it's a really crowded place and I can see people are anxious, I would wear a mask, because to me that's respectful and that's what we teach our children, and I would expect the rest of the community to be able to do that.
Nicola, in your schools, how many bubbles have burst? How many children are not in the classroom? How many teachers are stuck at home?
I strongly dislike the word bubble now. I used to like bubble. I think it was quite an offensive word. I'd really don't mind if I never hear it again. I feel sorry for parents and for working parents in particular, because it's ludicrous. It's been a little bit crazy. The amount of children that have had to go home and miss 10 days of education for what seems...
How many have you got out at the moment?
Out at the moment, well, today we had a phone call to say that a little boy who's on a residential trip, really enjoying being outdoors, his parents have tested positive, so he's had to be taxied back to school, and that's him now. He won't see the end of term. We have reception classes out because one person had tested positive there. We had a school trip. The children on the bus, one person got COVID, so therefore the rest of that bubble was out. And what I would say is it's really unclear in the guidance that we have been getting. For example, if this week, so I might have sent a child home very reluctantly for 10 days to isolate, but come Monday, if there's somebody in the class who tests positive, the rest of the children don't need to, but those other children can't come back.
Yes.
And how does that make any sense to anybody? And the guidance hasn't changed, and I'm desperate for it to change, because that can't make sense to anybody.
Well, as luck would have it, Nicola, you've got a government minister sitting next to you.
Can you explain that? So why would somebody be off, have to do the rest of the 10 days, but somebody on Monday can stay in school, but those children can't come back?
So you and I know that the rules have changed as of Monday in circumstances where we are trying to enable a situation where we get to the 16th of August, where we won't be in a position that you will need to self-isolate in any way whatsoever, provided you had a test in an appropriate way. I think the one bit I wanted to just add on to this conversation very quickly is you can't discuss this without making the repeated case, which I hope all of us will make, that have the vaccine. There are still people out there who haven't had their first vaccine, sadly, but more particularly, if you are due your second vaccine, please sign up, because that is the way forward, and that is the protection that is the most important thing here.
Thank you for that. Let's quickly return to Joyce. Joyce, are you going to be wearing a mask next week?
I will be wearing a mask, yes. Our hospitals are really under pressure, and people are dying in this country, and that is of huge concern. I'm also really concerned, Nicola talked about children, I'm really concerned about long COVID and the impact of that on children, so I will definitely be wearing a mask. I think Chi talked about the mixed messages, and I absolutely agree with that. We need clarity from government, and I think clear messages about wearing a mask is not just for my safety, it's for your safety, and I think that's the message we need to get across. Thank you.
Joyce, thank you for that. We'll head to Richard Simpson for his question in a second, but let me just first tell you about the conversation on Saturday afternoon on any answers. Here's the number if you want to get stuck into the discussion: 03700 100 444. 03700 100 444. The line's open at 12:30. Anita on the radio, as usual, at 2 o'clock. So next to Richard then, and let's hear your question. Hello.
Thank you. Does the panel think that the Home Secretary's condemnation of taking the knee by the English football team as gesture politics, and her lack of condemnation for fans booing it, has helped to stoke the fire of racism?
Now, where shall I go first on this one? Guy Opperman.
So I think we all need to get behind any campaign that is combating racism in all shapes and form. And I am absolutely supportive of the England players and their actions, both on the pitch but also off the pitch. I think there is a difference between a statement that all of us would sign up to combat racism, whether that is taking the knee or any other particular physical action, and identifying specific actions, some of which the government have taken this week. For example, getting in the social media companies, really drilling down on them, trying to ensure that anybody who was abusing individuals are actually held to account, are actually prosecuted, such that if they use racist language, that those people are then absolutely dealt with by the police. So I think there are actions that people can take in terms of outcomes to combat racism, whether that is the Commission on Racial Equality, all the work that the government is trying to do. But there is also these specific actions that individuals can take, and we should support those individuals in the choice that they make. It comes down to individual choices of people who wish to make a statement, whether it is to take the knee or to take any particular other action.
Okay. I get that there's a broad debate here about the regulation of social media companies and broader question of racism in society. But to address Richard's question directly, because I'm not sure you quite did, is taking the knee gesture politics? That's what the Home Secretary suggested. Is it or not?
So taking the knee is an action to demonstrate your views as against racism, which should be utterly applauded, and there's no problem with that at all. There are other actions that you can take which are outcomes that the politicians can do to actually make a difference to racism, and individuals can do it, whether it is stopping people, etc., who are actually being racist. So I think what was done is trying to differentiate between the one which is a physical act to make a statement and the other which is actually forming an outcome.
I still can't quite work out if that was a yes or a no as to whether it's gesture politics.
Well, because they're two different things, that's why.
Chi?
Well, first of all, let's say that the England team, they are such fine young men whose talents on the pitch and off the pitch and whose behaviour is to be applauded. And, I don't know under which circumstances one would boo the national team. I want to say one could boo the national team. The clue's in the name, England. But I think to condemn them for making a statement, which it is, to making a statement about the racism that they experience is utterly wrong. And the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister refused to condemn those who were booing our national team for making a statement about racism. And in so doing, they didn't, show racism the red card. They gave racism the green light. And what they need to do now, just be clear, is to apologise. Because I don't know about you, but I have read Mark Rashford's, letter about, how he felt about not getting that penalty kick right. Well, let's have Priti Patel and Boris Johnson admit that they got that bit wrong. Let's have that. Let's have them say that, and then let's move on. And can I just also say, Chris, just quickly, because I've seen this before. Guy and the others are saying that the social harms bill will address this. It won't. Well, firstly, it won't be on the statute books for at least, another 2 years. It's just a draft bill now. And what it does is it gives the platforms a free hand. It says that, they've got to publish how they're going to deal with harmful abuse, but it doesn't address anonymity. It doesn't put any liabilities on them, and it doesn't say what they have to do about it.
I will give Guy a right to reply, but let's go to John Elliott next.
Yes, well, is it gesture politics? I don't know. These are all words, aren't they? I think what changed my mind was actually what Gareth Southgate said. And I can understand that. There's a team of people here who want to do... If you've got a team, getting a team bonding is vitally important, and he did that very, very well. And those players felt, to support each other, you have to make some kind of gesture, which is understandable. But football fans aren't the most pleasant people in the world. I remember going to a game in Middlesbrough where Newcastle were playing, and the Middlesbrough supporters booed Alan Shearer from start to finish and called him worse names, and what his mother did was quite disgusting. So, but what did Shearer do? He scored 2 fantastic goals, and that's the best answer.
Thank you. Dame Nicola next.
Well, I'm really pleased to see that Jordan Pickford and Jordan Henderson were part on our England team. and in fact, 15 out of the 23 players grew up in the north. So, that was nice to see as well. I also think Gareth Southgate, actually, what a brilliant leader he is. He's calm, he's considerate of his team members, he's very focused, and I think he has shown real leadership throughout his time as England leader, and I'm looking forward to him taking on the World Cup challenge. More specifically, Richard, to answer your question, 40% of people in a More report post had said that the British public supported the players taking the knee. And I personally think if the England team want to call out racism, I fully support that they're able to do that. I do agree that no real football supporter should boo their national team. That doesn't make a great deal of sense when they should be there to support them. And I'd like to actually see us all do an anti-racist campaign that we'll all get behind, that everyone agrees on what it is we are representing. And I think that would be the way forward. And, you know, children in school have got it right. You know, they're innocent, they play together, they support each other. And where do we lose that? What goes so wrong?
I was going to ask you, Nicola, how have you and your colleagues approached the last few days, this raging row around race, but then also handling for children the excitement of the tournament that then, from an England fan's perspective, ended in crushing disappointment?
We changed the narrative. I would never have focused, and I wish the media wouldn't have focused on the racism comments to the extent they did. Marcus Rashford got it right. He said, call me out for my missing the penalty, call me out for my football, but don't call me out for this. So to me, with the children, we talk about the football skills. They idolise the players. They look up to them. They want to be him, and they haven't lost that. Disappointment comes in life. The children are very robust. They were really excited for England to get as far as they are. And I wish the narrative had remained how well they had done. Just think how excited we all were on that Saturday, building up to that match. And as soon as it got to penalties, I'm pretty sure we all thought, oh, this isn't our strength here, and this is probably going to go all a bit wrong. And who better than Gareth Southgate to support the players who would miss the penalties afterwards, you know, and to give them a great big massive hug. But the children picked themselves up, shook themselves off and got on with life, and because that's what they do. Maybe some adults can follow that.
Thank you for that. We're going to move on in a second. Guy, if I may, I'm just going to have one last go coming back to this whole business of the knee and gesture politics. Johnny Mercer, your colleague, former minister, Conservative backbencher, was suggesting the other day that he felt that some Conservatives had managed to, perhaps inadvertently as he saw it, get into the wrong place on this whole thing of Black Lives Matter and taking the knee, and perhaps thinking too much about what some of the political objectives of the BLM movement in the States might be, dismantling capitalism, defunding of the police and all the rest of it, and bundling that together with a simple gesture from players who have explicitly and publicly said, look, this is just about making a statement about racism. Has that been a mistake?
No, I think what has happened is that there is a difference between a gesture that is a perfectly valid gesture to demonstrate that you passionately oppose racism, and you're perfectly able to do that without saying, I'm going to take away all the police, I'm going to destroy capitalism. And understanding that taking the knee does not necessarily denote, for 99% of people who support that organisation, does not denote that they are supporters of Black Lives Matter's more extreme policies, is perfectly legitimate.
Would you take the knee?
Yes.
Here's the number for any answers if you want to talk about this.
I'm not a good enough footballer, though.
03700 100 444, the number for any answers. And we go to Karim next. Hello.
Hello. How will we know when the North has been levelled up?
A direct question on a big speech this week from the Prime Minister in Coventry. And John first on this one.
Levelling up, it's another soundbite, isn't it?
I was wondering what you were going to say then. I took a big deep breath.
Well, it's a soundbite. What does it mean? I think what it means is giving people opportunities. In fact, I was involved in a meeting yesterday in Crook in County Durham, talking to the local MP, and I was pleasantly surprised, actually. I thought it was going to be trying to take our high streets back to where they were 10 years ago. But it isn't. It's about culture, it's about residential, it's about looking forward. And I was very pleasantly surprised that the government had brought something forward that seemed pragmatic and realistic. Levelling up, it's a soundbite, isn't it? I think it's about opportunities for all. It's not about us taking it away from anyone else. And I know sometimes in the northeast we do actually blame all our problems on the people in the south, and sometimes we've got to look at ourselves to make it a better place. So, yeah, it's a good thing. I think it's going to be effective.
Help me out, John. When I started my BBC career here in Newcastle 20 years ago, the northeast of England was a sea of red, a sea of Labour seats, with the exception actually of what is now Guy's seat in Hexham. Does that imply that some of this stuff about levelling up has resonated with lots of people? Certainly when I was covering the Hartlepool by-election a few months ago, that came across.
I think the change is bigger than that, actually. It's taken longer, actually. And it's partly Labour losing their way a little bit, actually, I would say, it's more than the Conservatives being brilliant. And that's politics, isn't it? I think it's been moving for some time. I think Brexit was quite a big thing. But even before then, I think there's been a change. And we need an effective opposition, so we need to think about how to sort that out.
Dame Nicola Stevenson, an education perspective on this notion of levelling up.
Well, I have great misgivings whenever a two-word slogan is suddenly thrown our way that's meant to undo decades of underfunding in the north. It's we think about health, the education system has been underfunded now for a long time, and I know I'm going to get a quote back about how many billions are being put in, but when you get more children into school, that diminishes, it disappears. There isn't enough money in schools. We've got poor housing, the sense of community, I think, has been damaged. So levelling up, yesterday I was really waiting to hear what that meant. I was really quite excited to hear what that meant. And I think I will be dropping Boris an email to say I don't mind leading the local community and getting something done for Newcastle. And, if he wants the community to come together to improve our area and he's willing to put the money behind it, I'd be all for that. I don't think that'll possibly happen, but he wants the emails. The reality is there's 4.3 million children living in poverty in our country. That's outrageous, and that is 31% of children in poverty. I don't think we should tolerate that. So levelling up,
There's clearly, Nicola, some colossal challenges that you touch on in your answer there. But if there was one thing that the government could do that would make the business of teaching the next generation of children easier, better, more effective, what would it be?
Well, Sir Kevin Collins did a report into this, and he said in order for the children to catch up after COVID, which would obviously help level up, if we understand what level up means, he said it was 15 billion. He's really, really clear on that. And the children were told by our government that no one's going to be left behind here, but we're going to give you 3 billion. And we can't do it on £3 billion. It can't be done. Other countries, we've spent £120 per pupil. Other countries have spent 1,800. The Netherlands, 2,100 per pupil. What would I ask for then? I would ask for the money directly into schools and put the money where their mouth is. And if they want No Child Left Behind, give us the chance to do that.
Guy Opperman for the government.
Well, let me try and answer the question. What levelling up is all about? I believe it's about opportunity, it's about aspiration, it's about improving skills, it's about transforming education, it's about trying to make sure there is the proper infrastructure in your local community that can support you going forward, and it is about trying to ensure that there is the investment in that community. And I'll give you specific examples. All 4 high schools in my community in Hexham over the last 12 years have been rebuilt. No government for successive generations has done anything there. I'll give you examples of what we're doing in Teesside under Mayor Ben Houchen. There is transformation on Teesside where there is investment and the regeneration that's going on on is immense. I agree with John's point that in relation to Hartlepool, it is patently obvious that many people in Hartlepool on the doorstep, and I went there repeatedly, felt massively left behind by a local community and by a local Labour MPs who seemed disinterested in that community. And they have transformed their views, and it has been for some time the view of the North East is changing, that they believe much more in aspiration and opportunity. And it's about individual things in education, so whether that is T-levels, whether it is about the new UTC in Newcastle, whether it is about the apprenticeship academy in Hexham, whether it is about the opportunities that follow from the way we're doing the lifetime skills guarantee. Those are things that give people the ability to do better for their kids than their parents did previously. And that's why this community in the North East is being transformed.
Does levelling up mean giving more money to the north of England and less to the south?
No, I think it should equal for everybody, but there is definitely got to be support for those areas that are disadvantaged, and that is what we are trying to do.
Chi?
Well, the Prime Minister spoke for an hour today, and I still had no idea what he meant by levelling up after that, and I have to say I don't really understand from listening to Guy either. What was interesting was the things he did not speak about, and those are some of the things that Nicola talked about, like the huge inequalities which have increased under the Tories, like the fact that our health inequalities have increased, so we have a jaw-dropping decrease in our life expectancy in the north, such as unemployment, child poverty. If you want concrete examples, 45% of children in Newcastle Central, where we are growing up in poverty, and 40% of them have parents who are working. So this is in-work poverty. So these are some of the inequalities which we have, which the Prime Minister is not addressing because he has no detail, he has no plans. It's all sort of bluff and buster. And just to talk about the Levelling Up Fund, which I think Guy was, that is about Whitehall. So where's the power in that for us? That is about Whitehall watching local authorities in the North East fight out with each other, compete with each other for small pots of money. What we need is a long-term strategy which builds on our strengths, because the technology, the green revolution, etc., puts in place regional transport so that Guy and I can get between our constituencies more quickly. Regional transport integration, and also devolves power in skills, because skills are so important, and the investment in skills to the North East, so that we can grow our economy. We do not have to rely on Whitehall doling out money to us.
Clearly it's your prerogative to criticise the government, but do you accept that this idea of levelling up, this phrase which is so widely talked about now, at some level it is cutting through, isn't it? And then you look at, I made this point to John a few minutes ago, that the relative performance of your party and Guy's over the last 10, 20 years, and Conservatives seem willing to spend loads of money. They seem to be eating your lunch, don't they, politically?
We have clearly got a lot to do to win back the trust and confidence in some areas of the North East. And I would say also, the rhetoric was attractive, levelling up, but we're 2 years in, over 2.5 years into a Tory government, and what have we seen? Are we seeing that? And let's forget that under the last Labour government, for example, my school, Kenton School, was rebuilt. We had a regional development agency. We had investment in local industries. The quayside was transformed. So not enough was done, because we want the roots of prosperity here for, on our own terms. But what the Prime Minister is suggesting, I didn't understand it. It was gibberish, and it doesn't have any
But communities here do understand it, because when I first came in 2010, there was one Conservative MP. We're now up to 11. The Labour Party is in retreat in the North East, and frankly, you have to ask yourself why, because people do not believe you anymore.
Jane?
Absolutely. The Labour Party, the Labour Party is not in retreat, Guy, and
you've lost 11 seats.
We have to see the difference between the rhetoric and the results. And
but you have gone backwards, haven't you? That's the fact. Labour has been going backwards in the North East of England and more broadly.
Right, and we are working for every vote because the Labour Party is the party of working people, and the opportunity and the aspiration that you talk about will not be given by Tory MPs, in the South. It will come from Labour. It will come from the people of the North East and the voice of the North East. And Boris Johnson, he talks and he talks and he talks, but he needs to deliver in the North East.
Let's return to our questioner on the subject of levelling up. Karim, thanks for your question. What would you want to see? What would levelling up look like to you?
Well, that's exactly what I was hoping to hear from the panel, which is actually what would a levelled up North actually look like? What would the vision be? But I'd just like to throw a challenge back, if I may, which is that actually the other part of my question was levelling up to what? What does levelling up equate to? And can you actually level up something called the North without actually taking resources away from something broadly called the South? Which is, I think, a challenge that a lot of people on the panel and a lot of politicians are not willing to actually address.
Thank you for that, and that's a wonderful thought for our listener in the south of England or in the north of England or elsewhere in the UK for any answers. 03700 100 444 if you want to join the conversation on any answers. 03700 100 444. This is Any Questions from Newcastle with Guy Opperman for the government, Chion Wura for Labour, Dame Nicola Stevenson, a teacher, and John Elliott, a businessman, and Steve Whitley with our next question. Hello, Steve.
Hello. Do you think that the current national curriculum serves the interests of children or society? If not, what would you change?
Dame Nicola Stevenson.
Strange that you came to me first on that one, isn't it? I think we've got a really rich national curriculum in our schools at the moment, and schools have got the freedom to match their curriculum to the children within the schools. So, for example, in my schools, we would do a lot of work around character and building character so that we are building children who can go out into the community and really add value to their community that they are working in. So I think we do have a wide and rich curriculum. Secondary schools, I think we could possibly have a look there. I don't think it necessarily meets the needs of all the children who aren't particularly academic. I would like to see them be given more options to maybe be do apprenticeships or to have manual skills. So we could look at the secondary education, but I'm a specialist in primary, and I think we deliver as a nation a brilliant curriculum for our children, and we do have a little scope to move on that.
How is, from the perspective of you as a teacher in teaching for about 30 years, how has that improvement looked as far as the curriculum is concerned from when you started as a teacher?
So when I started teaching, there was the national curriculum, so it was very, very prescriptive when it first came out in 1988. It's eased off a little bit to give schools more flexibility around what they can teach now, particularly in the academies. You can have the freedom to actually deviate completely from the national curriculum if you can come up with something even better.
What have you ditched that you've dreamt up something better? Is there stuff that you've thought, I don't like this much, and we'll do something else?
What we've really used is I think children need to have time to reflect on themselves as people, and they need to know what their dreams are, what their ambitions are, what careers they might be interested in. So we have dedicated a lot of time towards making sure the children in Newcastle do have that confidence to go forward, have self-belief. I don't call them soft skills. I think if a child believes in themselves and you teach them how to read really well, so they've got that wealth of knowledge that they can always access if you're a really good reader, and that's what we do aim towards.
Thank you, Nicola. John Elliott, I'll bring in you next. I mentioned in my introduction a light blast of scepticism that you've expressed in the past about all things schooling. The national curriculum, what do you reckon?
Well, I think the problem is it's a bit of a one-size-fits-all, especially at the later ages. The primary is the one that's good, but there's a lot of... There are people, teenagers, 15, 16-year-olds in school now doing academic subjects when they would actually develop more, learn more by getting out in the world of work. And we keep them there, trying to teach them quadratic equations, which would be of no use to at all in their lives. And I think they'd be better off. We should look at the development of the children rather than education. Education is part of it, There's more things than education in development. And you know, education didn't suit me because I'm not very good academically. I like to do it my way. And therefore, we seem to be more and more in schools teaching people to pass examinations. And passing examinations isn't the same as understanding the subject. And I think we just got to look a bit more, not a one-size-fits-all. There's many different types of children. And people who are not academic, not inferior people, they need attention as well. And I think a lot of them would benefit, like me, leaving school at 15, getting a job. They'll mature more, they'll learn things, they'll earn some money, and they'll make a contribution to our economy.
What do we need to see, John, at children learning at school so that the northeast of England can see more successful businesses like yours, big private sector employers?
If you think of most of the, what I call the important jobs that make our lives acceptable, putting food on the table, building washing machines, building houses, most of those skills, bricklayers, joiners, farmers, learned on the job. Of course we need education, we need to be taught things. But learning on the job is very, very important to us. And the things that I think are more important than having a faster laptop is having food on the table. And that's farmers who learn on the job. So we need to look at what does each individual child need personally, rather than one size fits all. What suits this person? We should almost get rid of the education department and have a department for child development and take them from birth to adulthood and look at each child, what does that child need to be a better person?
Thank you, John. Sian Wirra for Labour next.
Well, I think that's a fascinating question, Steve. And my answer would be that the national curriculum should serve the interests of the child, because it is by serving the interests of the child that we serve the interests of society. Because it is by ensuring that every child can develop to their full potential. And that does mean that we do need to have flexibility. I mean, I would like to see more sort of soft skills, if you like soft skills, those financial skills, you know, teaching children about respect, which Nicola was talking about. But I also think that we need to have focus the investment on schools and teachers, because that makes such a difference, you know, in terms of how any curriculum is engaging, and also in bringing in, you know, bringing in businesses like John's business, you know, so that they can engage with children and make it real. Now, my background's an engineer. I am very passionate about having, you know, more women, more girls, more people from ethnic minorities. I was on the Hamilton Commission to improve black representation in STEM and in motorsports. I know that the difference there is about having, you know, teachers who are confident and inspired, so that the young people feel that, you know, understand the great opportunities that any given subject, you know, whether it's history or STEM or whatever, can give to them. And so I would invest in teachers, in education, and in giving heads power. And that is also why, just to finish on this, that's also why the lack of a proper, you know, educational recovery plan at this point is so critical, and we need to be spending money on that.
Okay, given what John and Nicola both said about, particularly perhaps at a secondary level, a greater focus on technical skills and apprenticeships, and you hear government ministers talking about that, and I'll bring Guy in a second. With hindsight, was the Labour government of a decade or so ago's dream of getting university attendance to 50% of all school leavers, with hindsight, was that a mistake?
You know, I think it's never a mistake to be kind of ambitious as to the level of skills.
Well, why should ambition equate to going to university?
If you let me just finish, Chris. You know, so the levels of skills, it's not about going to university. The level of skill is the closest sort of characteristic which drives economic success over time in any regional economy. So we needed to be ambitious about the level of skills, and so it was right to target that. I do think that you're right to suggest that doesn't and shouldn't have to be through universities. Though we are seeing, for example, university apprenticeships, which I do think bring that kind of mix of classroom teaching and on-the-job teaching. So I think having an ambition which says higher level skills for everybody was absolutely right. And the issue was saying that that needed to be, or implying that needed to be just sort of in the classroom-based skills. I think we need to have more and higher levels of skills, and that needs to be more diverse.
I'm going to push you in the way that I did to Guy earlier, because I'm not sure that was quite an answer to my question. I mean, was the 50% target of children aged 18 leaving school going to university, with hindsight,
No.
a mistake?
No, that was not a mistake.
Right. You've answered.
No, that was not a mistake. We need more broader sort of education in universities, and we also need 50% at university, 50% on apprenticeships before universities. But let's have high levels of skills.
Okay. Guy Opperman.
So I think there is common agreement that in primary level, we've got it pretty much right. I think in secondary level, there has been an acceptance that what you're doing post-16 in particular needs improvement. So there is a huge amount of effort going into FE, into T-levels, into lifetime learning, but also into apprenticeships like the Hexham Apprenticeship Academy I opened at EGA. Now, there are great opportunities going ahead, but I'll give you one constructive suggestion that I would like to see more. I set up a thing called the Northumberland Community Bank with church leaders and many other local people. And that was to provide financial loans and assistance to, particularly to the vulnerable in our local community. It is now the fastest growing bank here in Northumberland. It is, however, best known for what's called the Lifesaver programme, which goes into schools and teaches financial education and actually genuinely transforms the financial education of those people who literally run a bank in the schools, giving them all the life skills that John was talking about of handling money and understanding savings, and certainly more emphasis, as we have already in the secondary system, on financial education and financial inclusion. I speak as the Financial Inclusion Minister, would be a good thing in my view.
Have we collectively, Guy, as a society, done enough as far as the kind of parity of esteem is concerned between a university education and a more technical apprenticeship education, so that people don't feel that if they don't go to university, they're somehow second class?
No, we have not done enough, and it is a work in progress. I think there has been a huge amount of effort to try and change that, and that is still a work in progress. There is still too many parents who think you're only a success if you go to university. That is wrong.
And are there sometimes government ministers who are inclined to talk up apprenticeships but wouldn't want their own children to do them?
No.
I got two direct answers from Guy and Chi in the last 5 minutes, which I was thinking, oh, Guy's going to talk all the way and I'm going to run out of time here. But no, we've got a direct answer.
You're spoofing now.
It's much appreciated.
And I had a technical education in a university.
I was an apprentice
so you
jockey.
can do that as well.
So I was an apprentice jockey. I just was a very bad apprentice jockey.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you to Chi. Thank you to Dame Nicola Stevenson and to John Elliott. Thank you to everyone here in Newcastle for coming along. Hear the number one more time for any answers, 03700 100 444. In a fortnight's time, we're going to be in Chard in Somerset. Next week, we'll be in Campbelltown in Argyll and Bute. From here in Newcastle, thank you for listening.